Welcome back to the Jungle Gardeners. Only going to have a couple more videos here at this property before we move. We are moving in a week to our new home in a much colder place. Moving from the land of sun and storms to the land of snow and ice. Are we crazy? Maybe, but we're doing it. Anyway, in this video I just wanted to talk about the importance of planting trees and thinking about planting trees when you have a garden and why. A lot of people are often perplexed about our garden because it is a jungle. We have a lot of trees, and that's not the normal aesthetic. In America, we've adopted this colonizing view of what a garden should be, a big open lawn that you have to water and fertilize and weed and mow, and that's just wasteful, and it's a colonizing kind of attitude. So for us with our garden, if you haven't watched all my other videos by now, we didn't ask what kind of a service can this garden offer to us? How can it be appealing to our eyes? The question was, what can we do with our garden to improve the world? Not just for us, but for others, other humans, other species. So with our garden, everything was very conscious about what impact is planting this plant and doing this method of planting or fertilizing or weeding or watering. What is this method going to do to the environment, to the local ecosystem? Will it impact other humans in some negative way? Because we always want to minimize our negative impact on the planet and on others in our lives. Because personally, I wouldn't feel right if I knew something I was doing was impacting another species or another person in a bad way, because I like peace, I like harmony, I like to treat others the way I want to be treated, and that goes to other species as well. So with everything we've done in this garden, it's always been with that in mind, having a low impact, as low of an impact as possible. And one of the first things we did, and one of the main things we did in this garden, is planting trees. So you can see all the trees here, and that's what makes it look like a jungle. But here's the reason for planting trees. And there's many reasons. The first and foremost reason we started planting trees was because it's very sunny down here. If you've never lived in Southwest Florida, the sun is intense. It is more intense than other places in the country. And that's why I've had skin cancer 5 times, even though I'm still quite young. So we have intense sun, and your air conditioning runs constantly in the summer to keep it cool. One way you can keep your AC bills down is by having a lot of shade in your yard. So the first thing we did when we moved in was plant lots of trees. The best thing you can do for the environment where trees are concerned is preserve existing trees, because they are sequestering the most carbon, and we want to sequester carbon. They're helping offset flooding. We want to offset flooding. So the most important thing you can do is preserve existing trees, which is what we did with the 3 extra lots we bought over time that have these big, beautiful pine trees that we did not plant. So the best thing you can do for the environment, don't cut down trees. Preserve existing ones. If you can buy lots, vacant lots that have trees on them, and preserve those trees, do that. If you can't, and you just have your yard, the second best thing you can do is plant trees, because you're sequestering carbon. You're providing shade, not just for yourself, but for wildlife. You're providing habitat. You're providing a food source. So for example, native trees are what I advise planting the most. This is an oak tree here. We didn't plant it, but we preserved it. We bought this lot and preserved that tree. And why oak trees? Well, it's native. It's going to sequester a lot of carbon. It's going to provide a lot of shade, but it's also host to hundreds of species of moths whose caterpillars feed on the leaves. So you're providing a food source to those moths, and those moths are a food source to the birds, like the grackle you hear in this oak tree that's mad that I'm blocking its ability to use the pond, so I'll walk away. But you're providing a food source to the wildlife. You're helping to preserve an ecosystem, the food web. You're starting that food web out. So native trees are the first thing I would plant if you want to help the environment and help yourself. Second thing I would plant is something like this here, food plants for humans. This is a tamarind tree, and Doesn't have to be a tamarind tree, but it should be something appropriate to where you live. So you should know your agricultural growing zone, your USDA growing zone, and find trees that grow well there. Down here in the tropics, it's many tropical fruit trees. So we have our tamarind, we have mangoes, we have grumachama, you can plant cherimoya, there's many sapotes you can do, but fruit trees are a really good choice also to plant. And again, you're also providing shade, sequestering carbon, reducing the impacts of flooding. So that's the second thing you should plant, is fruit trees. Now, if you're wondering, what is the best time to plant a tree? There's an old proverb, I think it's a Chinese proverb, where someone asked that, and the answer is, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So today would have been 20 years ago, but if you're starting out now, today is the best time to plant a tree. And again, which tree you choose depends on what your goals are with your garden. And ours is help wildlife, help ourselves. There's so many people who just want to help themselves, and not even in the best way. They just want a pretty yard, something that looks good, that they look at it and their neighbors will be jealous of. So they have their grassy lawns, ornamental plants, non-native trees that don't even offer fruit. So they don't offer food for the wildlife, and they don't offer food for themselves. And that's a waste. That's incredibly wasteful. And the thing is, there's no shortage of people doing that. We have plenty of people doing that. And what we need is more people planting for the wildlife or growing food for themselves. We don't need more people growing plants that are food for nobody. So I just want to stress the importance of planting trees of some kind, either native plants for the wildlife or fruit trees that you can feed yourself and your family with. Because especially in times like now, the most important thing is making sure we're nurturing ourselves, nurturing those around us, and helping the environment. So whatever you can do in your life to help make those goals a reality is going to make a big difference. And even if it's just something as small as planting a fruit tree. So whether it's in your garden or other things in your life, just want to encourage you all to consider how you can make a positive difference. Now, too often, we have plenty of people who ask the question, whenever they're asked to do something, well, what's in it for me? But that's the wrong attitude. There are times in your life where you are going to need to just think about what's in it for me. When you're maybe working 80 hours a week just to make the ends meet, and you don't have time to do anything for anybody else but yourself, and that's fair. But if you're at a point in your life where you have the time or the money to not be selfish, and to ask whenever you're making a choice, whether it's what you're about to eat, put in your mouth, or what you're going to plant in your garden, what clothes you're going to purchase to wear. If you're at a point where you can ask, how is this choice that I'm making affecting other species, other humans, or the environment? I encourage you to consider that with every choice you make, because every choice we make has consequences. Whether it's your gardening or your dietary preferences, they will impact yourself, but also other people, other species, and the environment as a whole. So always think about that. Do the research. Whether it's switching from buying fast fashion to going to the thrift store, or whether it's skipping meat a few times a week, or skipping meat all the time to have less of an impact on other animals and the environment, or whether it's just choosing a different gardening style, that instead of planting ornamentals that have to be fertilized and mowed and sprayed with pesticides, if instead you choose to plant native plants or things you can eat. Maybe you have money to buy a boat, but instead of buying a boat, you consider buying a vacant lot like this and preserving it. Not for you, but for the environment, for other species, and for other humans to enjoy. Because while we enjoy this too, we also know that our neighbors enjoy going for walks past our house and seeing the birds and the bees and the butterflies that we have preserved through the preservation of this land around us. There is another proverb about planting a tree in the shade of whom you will never stand. And I think that's important as well. So if you're thinking, well, I won't ever be around to see this tree really be big enough to provide shade or food, maybe think about what it will do for someone else after you. Because it's not just about us. We are just a blip in the history of humanity. And it's important to think about what kind of a legacy are you going to leave. Not even necessarily the legacy that people remember you for, but 30, 40 years from now, who knows who will be living on this property and enjoying the shade of the trees that we preserved, enjoying the mangoes of the mango trees that we planted. And maybe they won't know it was us. They won't have any idea who we were, but they'll be enjoying the fruits of our labors, and I'm sure they'll be thankful. Without knowing who to be thankful for, I'm sure they will be grateful that someone 30 or 40 years ago decided to plant a tree that they wouldn't be there long enough to enjoy. And I know for sure the birds appreciate our efforts. I can hear their songs every morning, their songs of thanks. And I am just happy to provide that kind of support to others, other species, the environment, other humans. So I just want to leave you guys with that message. And I will be doing maybe 1 or 2 more videos before we leave. But as I take some final strolls around our garden before we say goodbye and leave it to the next family to enjoy and preserve and protect and care for, those were just some thoughts I had that I wanted to pass along to my fellow humans. And maybe 5 people will watch this video, but if at least 5 people get the message and maybe pass it on to another 5, we can keep it going. So remember, your garden isn't just for you. Your garden doesn't just impact you. It impacts others. And what you do matters. What you do has an impact, and it matters, and you can have a positive impact or a negative impact, and that's all up to you and the choices you make. And even though I am a pessimistic gardener, I still hope that you all will follow my lead and do something that will have a positive impact on others. Thanks for watching, gardeners. Goodbye.